All right. You win. You guys win. It's Minnie talking. Rat Leader. You've beaten me. I concede. So, Bravo Music and Lucky Claw on my Patreon have both maliciously suggested Rat Leader for a Minnie talking. So, here we go. The Rat Leader is a speaking, highly intelligent rat. Seemingly, he controls a large group of rats who move to his will. This is a bit of a horror concept, but Warrior Cats doesn't exactly treat it that way. It's also just something that happens. That said, before this point we never really see rats behave like this, and after we don't either. Now, real rats are pretty smart, don't get me wrong, and in the universe of Warrior Cats, the cats themselves can speak to non-cat animals, such as Millie knowing a few words in dog, and Midnight the Badger being able to speak with cats. That said, Midnight might be some sort of immortal god, so that's not really a big deal. The intelligence of any non-cat animal seems to matter mostly only in regards to how the authors feel like writing them. Dogs can speak, but only in simple sentences. Even when entirely alone with no cats to overhear them or witness them, dogs speak to each other with only brief shouts of meaningful words. We see in the prologue to A Dangerous Path, the leader of the dogs orders things like, "Here, hole here," and "Free, pack free soon," and "Run, pack free, run now," and the much more memorable pack, kill. Non-Midnight Badgers are able to communicate with each other, though to what extent we don't know, and were capable of banding together and creating some sort of war group to attack the clans after they drove badgers out of the lake territory. Midnight tells Leafpool that they spoke of revenge, and all of this implies that even though it was an impulsive attack, it was planned. Midnight also implied that she tried to reason with them, but failed. We can assume from here that badgers probably have a more complicated language than dogs do. Likewise, aside from rats, SkyClan was also later driven out by a band of raccoons, which don't live in as large a group as the books describe, which also implies some level of organization. Maybe there are raccoon clans in the Gorge now. Except there aren't. We know there aren't, because they went there. Midnight has also spoken with other animals, saying, "I have traveled far, and many tongues have learned," Midnight told them. Tongues of other cats, who speak not same as you, of fox and rabbit also. They speak not of interest. Fox talk is all of kill, rabbit has thistledown for brain. So even prey animals in universe may have some sort of language capability. So animals talking, that's warrior cats. Cats are not special, but they might be more advanced than dogs, foxes, and rabbits are. So for rats to be smart enough to speak with cats, that really isn't an issue. Rats commanding a horde of other rats with body language isn't all that weird either, considering. But the book does make it weird, because they only show one rat ever participating in these behaviors. To some extent, it gets really creepy around this point, because if rats are sentient and rats can speak and learn and remember things from decades ago, the cats eat them. The cats eat them all the time. This kind of thing always bothers me, though. I hate when the prey animals can have a full conversation with the hunting animals, especially when the author tries to justify it with yes, that's just the way of life, that's just nature. I can't stand it. If these animals were really as smart as they're implying and had the capabilities to think and behave and act socially in the same way that humans do, they would have started figuring something else out by now. At the very least, the prey animals would have started figuring out something else by now. So that's your Moonkitti secret. When I am placed in a Animals of Farthing Wood adjacent environment, my suspension of disbelief just dies on the spot. It's also partially why I haven't finished Bravelands yet. I just can't stand this sort of thing. I do intend to finish Bravelands, though, for a reason. Anyways, back to rats. Rats come up a few times in early Firestar's quest just to remind you that rats exist, but we don't really learn about the rat leaders group until we're on the last fifth or so of the entire book, when a couple cats come back with news of being attacked by rats outside of a barn. When they approach the rats, one comes forward and speaks with Firestar and tells them, "Rats not die." Its voice grated like a claw dragged over stone. "Cats die." Sharpclaw slid his claws out. "You're sure of that, are you?" "Leave," the rat went on. "All cats leave. We killed you before, now we kill you again." "You killed us before?" Firestar exclaimed. "This time we let Black and White Cat live. The rat's eyes glittered with hatred. But only this time, you stay by river, you die. This gives Firestar a horrible realization, and he goes back to camp and finds evidence that the rats had previously driven out the original SkyClan. The rats attack SkyClan in the darkness of the new moon, but they retreat before the cats can defeat them. Firestar can't find the rat leader during this attack, but believes that the retreat is a trick to get the cats to follow them. Later, they track the rats to their nest in the barn, and the rat leader again says to him, "We killed you before, we will kill you again, you are few, we are more." Firestar and the rat leader find each other during the battle, and the rat says, "Die, cat," and kills him. Firestar decides to try to make the rat leader talk so they can kill it, but he must have said that a little bit too loud because after that point it never says anything again. Spotted Leaf comes down from cat heaven and tells Firestar that the rats are a hive mind. This just kind of reinforces Firestar's existing idea of finding the leader, and then he starts looking at the rat mass for the rat epicenter. And then, sure enough, there's like a rat wave that pulses from him, telling the other rats what to do. So he kills it, and all the other rats lose coordination, making them easy to chase off. Seemingly, despite how smart the rat leader was, he did not have a backup plan for rat leader dies. Guess he was like, if it's over, it's over. A big misconception I see a lot with the rat leader from people who haven't read it, I think, is that he either is telepathic or capable of some sort of mind control. If this were the case, Firestar looking for patterns in the rat's movements and body language just wouldn't work. The rats are carrying out his orders to the rats next to them, and if he was telepathic, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't really work this way. Especially seeing as it's, body language, like flicks of the ear that they're passing to each other so that they know what to do. There's a few big questions about the rat leader, though, like, why can it speak cat and none of the other rats? How does it remember the old SkyClan, and how and why it was chased out? The other rats don't seem to carry any of this information or ability. Additionally, the rats have absolutely nobody to turn to once he's defeated, implying he's the only one who was capable of controlling them. Here's my proposal. It was immortal. Not that it was invincible, but that this rat had been alive for a long, long time. This would explain why it has no air, why no other rats can speak, and why it knows so much about the clan. Additionally, we already have Midnight, and while I don't really remember if or not Midnight can get hurt and do not want to look into it, she is an immortal speaking animal that isn't a cat. So basically our only other example of a weird wild animal that can speak to cats is also immortal. And yeah, Millie can talk to dogs, Millie can say simple dog phrases, but that's not really the same situation. In real life, rats only live a couple years. That's not a long time to arbitrarily learn the language of a group your ancestors drove out dozens of years ago. Now, this group of rats does come back in SkyClan's Destiny, but this time they aren't organized well and don't seem to be able to speak. If the rat leader was one rat in a long line of rats taught to speak cat and remember their history, which would be the alternative to him being immortal, that would be one thing. But the fact that no new rat takes over in his absence is telling. The new rats aren't organized, they're not particularly troublesome compared to the rats from before, and the better part of a year has passed since their last rat fight. And for this knowledge to be passed down from generation to generation of rats, they would have to already be training the next rat leader basically the second that they assume the position of rat leader. First of all, because, you're only living from a year to 2 years as a wild rat. Secondarily, because if this knowledge is so important that it needs to be passed down through the generations, and having a leader and organization to any extent is important, then they would need to have a backup plan. They would need to have a rat heir. It's not like you can just train up one single rat and assume that nothing's going to ever happen to it just because it's the smartest rat. The rat leader is too rat smart to not think of these things. So that's my rat leader thought. Normal rat, but immortal, and capable of remembering and speaking. He can still be killed, but is otherwise never going to die of age. He's large, but not so large that he's immediately noticeable, implying that he's probably just a fully grown rat in size. The rat leader was clearly already aware that he could be hurt and killed, and defended himself, but had no backup plan for if things went wrong. Maybe because the other rats weren't capable of his level of thought, or maybe just from sheer overconfidence. Either way, on page there is only ever a single rat leader. And there it is. Rat leader mini-talking. As usual, mini-talking topics are things that I decide to do arbitrarily, either because someone suggested it, or because I thought that it would fit, or because I thought it would be easy to talk about. And in this case, it's because the rat leader seems to come up more often than it should in my Patreon server.